That's one of the biggest victories for the Me Too movement. A Los Angeles judge sentenced a former TV star and big name in the Church of Scientology, Danny Masterson, to 30 years to life in prison. Masterson was convicted of 2 forcible rape counts, which he committed during the peak of his career as an actor on the sitcom That 70s Show in 2003. Joining us now is legal affairs journalist and friend of the stream, Meghann Cuniff. Meghann was in the courtroom meticulously following the case, tweeting the latest, the nuances. Many news outlets have relied on her reporting. Thank you for your time, Ms. Cuniff.
Thanks for having me.
So this was a retrial. The guilty party, Masterson's defenders, said this was essentially a 20-year-old case of he said, she said. It was consensual. In the first trial, interestingly, ended in a deadlocked jury. The jury could not definitively decide on any of the 3 charges. What changed during the second trial with 2 thorough, forceful, guilty verdicts, the victims claiming they were drugged and forcibly raped by the actor?
What changed was an increased focus on Scientology. Prosecutors refined their case, shortened their case a little bit. The trial was a lot shorter than the first one, but the big change was a focus on Scientology and the inner workings of Scientology. They actually had a former Scientologist who testified as an expert witness, which it was the first time that had happened anywhere in the United States in a courtroom.
That's really interesting. We'll get more into that in a moment. In your article, you state the judge who was sentencing verbally dismantled Masterson's defense, telling him, you are not the victim, and giving him 30 years to life. I don't know what the guidelines are out there if they don't have any latitude in these things, but that is a sentence, 30 to life. Any message that sends?
Yeah, I think Judge Charlene O'Mado sent a powerful message about her role as a judge in the case, and then her views on a high-profile case, and the need to kind of set the record straight on what she views the actual facts of the case are, and to discredit his defense and make clear that she believes the victims and believes he's guilty.
Let's go back to some of your coverage of the case. The trial focused a lot, you said, on the influence of Scientology. One of the victims said the Church of Scientology was Masterson's protector and enabler, and that she, the victim, was brainwashed, that the church leaders knew about the rape. They covered it up. They've, of course, denied this. Has this done anything to harm the Church of Scientology? They seem to be fairly Teflon to fallout. Has Scientology, its leaders, taken a hit, or will it?
I think Scientology is definitely reeling from this. This is an unprecedented prosecution, and to have a member like this going to prison is a big deal for them. But they have so many resources. It's a big organization, and one thing that's remarkable is how well represented they are legally, particularly in LA. When there are lawsuits filed against Scientology, it's pretty regular that there are at least a few judges in LA Superior Court who need to recuse themselves because of their own legal connections to the Church of Scientology, either through themselves or through a spouse. So the Church of Scientology really is stacked legally, and I think that's going to continue to help them maintain a presence in society. Right.
Masterson, of course, the guilty person here, he really had an A-team, a superstar team of lawyers, likely, one would think, funded by the Church of Scientology. So let's move on now. The Me Too movement has been around since 2006, really went global, though, viral, if you will, in 2017. Since then, we've seen Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, other big names in Hollywood, the TV, film industry, convicted, sent to jail for rape. There's nothing, though, now on the horizon. Some almost see this like an end in a form to the Me Too movement, the most egregious examples of men using power to do bad. Is there a sense of that?
I think there's definitely a sense of closure in the finality of the criminal justice system to see this sentence handed down. And like you said, the other cases that have happened, there's definitely a feeling that this is a moment that we're experiencing. But then I think there's also a rise in civil lawsuits that we're seeing
Right.
from men accused of sexual assault against women who accuse them of sexual assault that are still beginning to happen. We've got a case here involving a former Dodgers baseball player, Trevor Bauer, who's suing a woman who accused him of sexual assault that will be going to trial probably in February, that I think there's a lot of focus on. And then the defamation lawsuits and stalking lawsuits that are against the Church of Scientology from
Right.
Danny Masterson's victims. While there's a huge sense of closure in the criminal case, there are civil cases that are just now beginning here that I think are really going to be heating up with
Yeah.
Danny Masterson and his victims.
So a lot of the criminal cases where one can go to jail are over the civil cases where you know, it's important to get, you know, monetary compensation. Those are still ongoing. Legal affairs journalist Meghann Cuniff, appreciate your expertise, your work on this case and others, and your time with us.
Thanks so much.